Have you ever listened to a politician speak and just felt something powerful happening with the words they're using, but you couldn't quite name it? Well, today, we're going to peel back the layers on some of the most potent rhetorical patterns out there. We'll look at exactly how these tools are used to shape the way we think and feel. Okay, so let's dive right in. But first, we need to get one thing crystal clear. This analysis is all about rhetorical comparison. What does that mean? It means we're focusing on the patterns of language, the techniques, not saying that different historical figures or their actions are the same thing. We're looking at the toolbox, not equating the builders. And look, this isn't just a small detail. It's everything. We're examining a recurring toolkit of language, and especially when you're talking about a topic as heavy as propaganda from Nazi Germany, you have to be incredibly precise. Analyzing the words is absolutely not the same as drawing a moral equivalence with the horrific actions. So, how do we do this? Well, we focus on specific, identifiable frameworks, the ones you see right here. Think of these as the building blocks for creating an us versus them mentality, for making complex problems seem simple, and for steering emotional responses. We're going to break down a couple of these in detail. So let's start with our first pattern, the contamination metaphor. This is such a powerful move because it takes a debate about politics or society and completely reframes it as a problem of biology, of purity and sickness. Here's a perfect example. In 2023, Donald Trump used this exact phrase to talk about immigration. The language here immediately frames migrants not as people making political or economic choices, but as a biological threat, a poison that's corrupting a pure national body. Now, you can see a structural parallel to this in National Socialist propaganda. It systematically used very similar biological language. It framed its targets, especially Jewish people, as pests, as a disease, or as corruptors that had to be cleaned out of the nation to restore its so-called purity. And that right there shows you the shared purpose of this metaphor, no matter the context. It's designed to completely bypass rational debate and tap directly into our primal emotions, like fear and disgust. See, when you frame a group of people as a non-human threat, it makes discrimination seem not like a political choice, but like a necessary act of survival. All right, now for another really powerful tool, the process of assigning criminality and guilt to an entire group of people, basically erasing any idea that they're all just individuals. If you think back to 2015, when Trump announced he was running for president, he took this incredibly diverse group of millions of people and painted them all with one single dark brushstroke. That word, they. It turns real people into a faceless criminal mob. It's a similar move with the proposed Muslim ban from that same year. It applied a blanket of suspicion over an entire global religion. The reason given was security, but the rhetorical trick was to treat every single member of that group as a potential threat. It replaces individual judgment with an automatic assumption of guilt. This tactic has a really chilling parallel in one of the central pillars of Goebbels' propaganda. That simple, all-encompassing phrase, "the Jews are to blame," was engineered to take every complex social and political problem and boil it down to one single identifiable enemy. And you can see why this is so effective, right? It gives a simple answer to very complex fears. This kind of rhetorical move is crucial because it makes collective action, whether it's exclusion or something far worse, seem logical. It frames the entire group as the problem, not the actions of individuals. Okay, we've seen the parallels in the rhetorical form. Now we're going to pivot to what is arguably the most critical part of this entire analysis, understanding the massive fundamental differences in the historical context that separate these examples. This slide really gets to the core of it. While the linguistic patterns, the words and metaphors, show some pretty clear parallels, the real-world situations they exist in are worlds apart. The type of government, the ultimate goals, completely different. So let's be really explicit here, because ignoring these differences is a huge mistake. We're talking about rhetoric from a totalitarian state that had a complete monopoly on information and was geared for genocide, versus rhetoric in a democracy with a free press and political opposition. The end goals, annihilation versus exclusion, are fundamentally not the same. That distinction is everything. So you might be wondering, if the contexts and the outcomes are so different, why does it even matter? Why bother analyzing these linguistic patterns at all? Is this just some academic exercise? Well, let's tackle a really common objection you hear. Come on, isn't this just tough political talk? Candidates exaggerating to get attention. It's not meant to be taken literally. But the source material we're drawing from argues that that objection just, well, it misses the point. Because when language is structurally designed to dehumanize people by calling them poison or a disease or a criminal class, it is never, ever just words. See, these rhetorical frames are so powerful because they don't just describe reality, they actively work to shape it. They push the boundaries of what's considered acceptable to say out loud. They normalize ideas that used to be taboo, and that lowers the barrier for discriminatory thinking and eventually discriminatory policies. So the main takeaway here isn't about equating people or political moments. Not at all. It's about recognizing that these specific, dangerous rhetorical tools, things like biologization and collective guilt, they're not relics of the past. They can and do pop up again in modern political conversations. And that leaves us with a final, really crucial question to take with us. As we listen to the news and engage in our own political discussions, how do we get better at spotting that critical line, the one between acceptable, even fiery political debate, and the genuinely dangerous territory of dehumanization? Because being able to see these patterns for what they are is the first, most important step toward resisting them.